George, thanks for coming in today. It's great to have you.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Thanks for having us. Perfect.
That's all right. Well, we know George, and we've been working with George on the Townhouses platform, but today we just wanted to essentially pull back the curtain and, in this podcast, really get into the values. So, off the bat, why don't you just give us an intro, George? Who are you? Who's TGC? And what can people learn about you?
Yeah, so my name is George Hercus. I grew up in Southland, spent about a decade in the Air Force, and then back in 2017, Tom, Charles, and myself, those are the three directors, that's our company name, TGC. We sort of met through mutual friends, and we sort of worked out that we're all sort of quite action-orientated, and we wanted to build sort of wealth and become financially independent. And we decided that we could accomplish this faster by sort of combining our skills and our resources, which we did. And we started off building our property portfolio together, doing some renovations, buying some rental properties. And then over a period of a couple of years, it quickly became apparent that we were capital constrained. We couldn't grow any further. And so we pivoted to a build to sell model, and essentially we became property developers by default. And so over the last sort of 3 to 4 years, we've gone from, three guys developing property on the side to, fully finished business. We've got 8 employees. We're certainly the largest townhouse developer in Dunedin. We've settled 69 homes. And we have another 52 under construction and 64 in design. So yeah, we're
awesome.
We sort of sell ourselves as a locally owned and operated property developer in Dunedin, and we're sort of one of the few companies trying to address the housing statistics of our city, which are pretty shocking, really. So yeah, it's us.
Yeah, right. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, so much in it. I mean, the first question is, how did Tom get the first letter in the name? Was there a voting process, or it just lined up and sounded better?
Oh, we actually spent the whole day at the pub trying to come up with a name for the company, and we had this big list of names, and we took it along to Tom's mum, who's an English teacher, and she just took one look at the list and said, "You guys all sound too arrogant in this. I suggest you just go for something simple like TGC." And so that was it. We took her advice and away we went.
There we go. She's got royalties for life. She'll watch this episode and think she's the fourth founder, the fourth horseman, which is great. Other thing, we'll get the next question I was kind of want to ask you was around the vision of TGC. And we've heard a bit about the backstory, but I think it'd be important for buyers to see, like you mentioned, capital constraints sort of helped you go from, three guys building and selling to consolidating and putting TGC together as a company. To address that one issue, but is there a difference in terms of like the vision of TGC to address, housing in Dunedin, instead of just being three guys that you probably could have just done well individually, maybe, building a handful of homes each year in terms of wealth building over time and compounding, you could have done well on your own. Are there other reasons why a development company is a really great solution for housing? I think it'd just be cool for buyers to understand, there's the moment people hear developers, sometimes people squeeze up a bit, but there's actually a greater play at hand. So do you want to talk a bit more about the vision of like TGC as a company as opposed to T, G, and C just doing their own thing?
Yeah, okay. There's a wee bit to unpack there. But so I think I'll start with sort of our sort of our vision, I suppose. So we've sort of carried over the philosophy of building from when we were building to hold through to our now development company. So the key sort of aspect there is that we only build property that we'll be happy to own ourselves, and so that sort of means avoiding sort of high risk design features such as internal gutters or flat roofs. And it also means avoiding sort of hazard zones. So in Dunedin, South Dunedin and St Kilda are two hazard zones, really sort of flood prone. And so That's sort of a key aspect of our sort of design philosophy. Then in terms of why development is sort of needed in Dunedin and why it's a good solution, some sort of statistics around Dunedin. So, but prior to that 2014, our population was really stable. We didn't really grow from year to year. It was only by a couple of hundred people a year. And so we were able to build organically the homes that we needed for the population as a group.
Yeah.
Since 2014, we've grown by about 10%, which meant that in order to house that population growth, we needed to build around about 550 to 600 homes a year.
Wow.
But on average, we only built 385 homes a year.
And
so we've had this construction deficit for about a decade now. Looking ahead to the next decade, we're forecast to grow by about 1% a year every year for the next decade, and then our population is forecast to stabilise from there. And so we need to continue to build around 550 to 600 homes a year every year moving forward for the next decade, right? So we've got a construction deficit. If we don't increase the amount of housing that we're building, we're going to continue having a deficit for the next decade. So the housing shortage at the moment is around about 1,500 homes. And if we don't resolve that, then it's going to continue to get worse. The other sort of unique factor for Dunedin is we're the oldest city in New Zealand. And so we've got a very old housing stock. About 20% of our homes are built before 1920.
Wow.
So it's hard to quantify, but that housing deficit, that construction deficit, is made worse from the replacement factor of the homes each year. So someone has to come in at scale and build housing across the complete range of housing solutions that the city needs. And the only real way to do that is through property development. So that's sort of why we exist, I suppose. That's why we're only building in Dunedin, because there's a demand there and there's a really pressing need. For example, the need is really illustrated by the emergency housing wait list in Dunedin. It's about 430 households are sitting there for urgent and pressing need for somewhere to live.
Wow.
So unless a developer comes in and starts building to scale, that problem doesn't get solved. So
I think it's super important for people to know, because Dunedin, being an old, the oldest city in New Zealand, carries I'm assuming an older demographic, as well as obviously Otago University bringing young people in for seasons. Like, I've got a friend who went down to Otago, studied medicine, and he's never left. He's a doctor now down there. But I'm sure that, like you said, as the city continues to grow, there's only so many houses that you can renovate and improve in quality to help one household, versus being able to potentially take one or two properties and produce 8 to 12 new households to take the pressure off of what I imagine, like in other regions, motels being pressed to the brink, just becoming emergency housing, large places actually building homes for people to have options. So that's I think it's just a good point to put out there, that there is a vision and a strategic outcome that developers like TGC are looking to achieve. It's not just producing wealth or large developments. It's actually about helping this housing supply, which is just great. Dunedin, though, one question I have is, like, Dunedin must be a very unique landscape, because you mentioned the opportunities for development. You can fix one home, make it clean and healthy, and that's awesome. Or you can develop on a piece of land, a large, like a green land, and be able to produce new subdivisions. But in Dunedin, with the terrain and everything, is it a unique city to approach in terms of development?
Yeah, so I suppose going back to that construction deficit, there's a reason why that exists, and it's a difficult city to build in, to develop in. So similar to Queenstown and Wellington, we're topographically constrained. We're surrounded by hills and water. So in terms of access to new land, there isn't any. So we can't grow wider. We can only increase our density. our underlying water infrastructure is very old and capacity limited, which means that there are a lot of areas where you physically can't build more density of the housing because the water infrastructure can't handle it. We've got because our city is so old by New Zealand standards, we have a lot of sort of really high profile historic buildings, and so all around the CBD there are historic building provisions which protect. It's very difficult to do infill developments in those around the city. So that's sort of some of the key sort of constraints. The other one, I suppose, is that because we are an old city, we've already chopped the sections up very small. So the lot sizes are, there's a lot of housing that's on sort of 350 to 550 squares, which makes it commercially not feasible to come in and develop it. So, that's sort of the housing constraints in Dunedin.
Some of the pressures there, and it kind of leads perfectly onto the next topic around design. I'm sure that for every developer, design is such a crucial part of the process because you're designing for future owners, future occupiers to live in a space. You're also working with the surroundings, and like we've just talked about, Dunedin being a unique landscape, housed in by sea and mountains. Tell us a bit about the design, like not just the constraints that you work with, but what are some of the things that TGC comes into and focuses on the design process?
Yeah, okay. So Dunedin is unique in that it is New Zealand's oldest city, and so we have all those high-profile older buildings, and it's actually quite a significant source of tourism revenue for Dunedin. And those historic buildings and the historic landscape is fiercely protected by both the city's population and the city's council. So one of the most difficult parts of gaining resource consent for us is meeting the Dunedin City Council's urban design team's requirements. So we've got our own in-house architect, and he works closely with the urban design team in the DCC to make sure that all the homes that we're designing are in keeping with the vibe and the look of the suburbs we're building in. So that means often it requires sort of traditional design features, often having gables, and making sure that we don't have a single look across the face of a development that sort of interrupts the landscape. And then from there, there's a well-known interior designer in Dunedin called Greg Booth, who owns Otago Designs. And so we work with him to select all the colours and the finishes in our homes to make sure they, sort of look good and fit in with the city. So I suppose that's sort of
awesome.
How we approach the design. Yeah.
And do you guys have, you work on the design? I think your architect just relocated to Dunedin, right? I mean,
yes,
family moved down. Yeah, awesome. All close together. With the design, you mentioned just that detail around keeping a development in itself, diverse, so that it isn't just a, I guess, cookie cutter or this, the same facades or colors around the whole site. Does TGC have like a overall style? So like your developments have key features that you guys like to, repeat and use, or is it kind of like you look at a piece of land and you kind of just like design what's needed for that site?
So I suppose we build three types of products at the moment. So we do quite a bit of social housing for community housing providers. We do sort of our core stock, which is a first home buyer and investor stock. And then we also do higher end town housing for downsizers and retirees. Awesome. And so those three products have their own sort of design criteria, which is driven by the customer. And then also the land requirements for those three products are different as well. Yeah. And so we build that into the design process. In terms of the variation in design, each suburb in Dunedin is slightly different. So, for example, we've got development in Balknolls and a development in Tainui. Now, Tainui is a beachside suburb, and so the homes they're building there are going to be more sort of beach cottage type vibe, beach villa type vibe, versus Balnolls is a very old suburb. It's got lots of historic villas in there, historic estates, and so we have to build homes there that are more traditional. With gables, white picket fencing, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and I mean, in the topic of like affordability and pricing, like affordability obviously is a pretty subjective term to, like you mentioned, who's buying, what they're buying for, whether they're downsizing and looking for an upgrade, retiring, or they're looking for that first home or investment property. How does a developer really approach that? Like, obviously, approach the topic of keeping homes high quality, but also affordable for the types of buyers that want to move in.
So I suppose that the price that we deliver property to the market is driven by two main factors. The first is the land cost, and the next is construction cost. In terms of land cost, it's a little bit constrained on what we can do there. But the sort of two main avenues that we use is a larger development has a cheaper land cost than a smaller development, because you share the land cost over a greater number of homes. Right. So particularly at that sort of investor and first home buyer market, we try and deliver developments that are sort of greater than 10 homes, so we can get that land cost down.
Yep.
And we also get a wee bit creative in the suburbs that we might look at. So we often go to sort of, I suppose, cheaper suburbs, but fine land which still has great outlook and access to amenities. So Tainui, for example, is sort of a medium socioeconomic area, but we've found some land there which has an amazing view out over the Chisholm Parks golf course and a view out to Ocean Beach, and is relatively close to supermarkets and cafes and the like. So that's sort of how we address the land cost aspect of it. In terms of construction costs, there's a lot of levers we can pull there. At the procurement phase, we can use our sort of buying power to get materials as competitively as possible. And we'll often go out to tender to 3 or 4 different building merchants, and then cherry pick the different products and different merchants. So, for example, Carter's have their own timber mill, and so we get our timber through Carter's because it's substantially cheaper than through placement. So that's sort of how we look at that. All our appliances we get through Fisher and Paykel, and because we're buying in such a significant bulk, our appliances we're on a pricing package which is similar to Harvey Norman, who are the largest buyer of Fisher and Paykel appliances in New Zealand. So at the procurement phase, there's a lot of savings there. At the design phase, we are very deliberate of our designs to make our homes as sort of cost efficient and as speedy to build as possible. So that's really it's around sort of the efficiency of the shapes and the and not having any sort of I suppose excess or unused space, underutilized space in the homes, and particularly around the roofing structure. Trying to avoid using sawtooth roofs and flat roofs where we can. So that's at the design phase, and then in the construction phase, that's where we really get the benefits of controlling our construction process as tightly as possible. We manufacture a lot of things off-site. So, for example, we manufacture our floors off-site, and then we crane them in. And that saves quite a substantial amount of time. And we also have our ceilings. We use a product called Metro Panel ceilings, which are they're craned directly onto the roofs and onto the framing. Sorry, and so aspects like that enable us to limit the length of time of the construction, and also improve the amount of workplaces so we can have open at the same time, which overall reduces the build cost of the development.
Yeah, and I think for buyers out there now, timing is such a important factor in their process, from lending and talking with banks and dealing on, putting down a deposit, for example, and then coming through to settlement. And so, for developers like yourself, putting in all of that extra work to not only save costs but also speed up building also, I imagine helps the buyer too, gives them more confidence on, obviously it can never be a dead set promise right from the beginning on an exact day and hour, but looking at a track history, people could look at TGC, for example, inquire and see that average build time and giving them confidence over like blending and stuff like that. That's awesome. Like buyers obviously don't need to know where every nail goes in a development, but for them to hear this amount of effort and also the amount of, the size of the task that it is for a developer to put homes together, I think is just like appreciating the detail that goes in, that all in all is to help the buyer. I think end of the day, everything that a developer does to save something here or increase quality here because you've made savings over here, the buyer can know that, they're buying a product that's not only well intended, but well delivered, which is good for buyers to know out there. In terms of, the description you just gave over those multiple stages kind of backs up quality assurance, but are there sort of like maybe just like one or two, are there specific activities that TGC does to assure quality for the finished product? And does TGC come back in a week to make sure it's all still sound, or how does that sort of maybe post-purchase, post-completion process look?
Yep. So I suppose quality assurance really underpins your reputation. So the ability for us to continue to grow and build housing means that we've got to keep building quality homes. So we so basically we drive that primarily by controlling our sites. So we have a TGC employed project manager who works on the site full time, on each of our project sites full time.
Awesome.
And they control the workflow. They control the ordering and quality assurance of the materials that we get. They make sure that the quality of each stage of the build meets our standards. So that's sort of, there's that aspect of it. And then the other key aspect is the subcontractors that we use. So as we've grown, we've essentially used largely the same subcontractors the whole way through, and they've grown with us. We know that those contractors meet our standards in terms of quality and also speed and efficiency. And because they've built with us for so long, they know our processes and they know how a townhouse is actually put together. And it actually quite a substantial benefit there, which is difficult to quantify. But those two aspects really keep the standard of our quality up. Then in terms of once we've built the homes, so we provide a 12-month defect period and then a 10-year structural guarantee. So in that first 12 months, there will often be sort of paint touch-ups, or as the townhouses settle and move slightly, there might have to come in and plane the doors. There's often little touch-ups afterwards, which is the same as in any home that you build. So we manage that directly as the directors. So usually either Charles or myself will take ownership of that, and we'll collate all the touch-ups that are required, and they'll come through and do them within that period to make sure that everything's sort of hunky-dory.
Yeah, awesome. I think it gives a lot of buyers listening to this just that confidence over not all the effort that you put in to get it to the finishing line, but then also it's not like like you've mentioned, Dunedin's a small region. Your reputation is based on the quality of the homes that you deliver, and obviously the quality of the customer service with those purchases. And so everything flies around, good and bad news. And so I guess that's like you guys' focus is not only delivering a good home, but then that 12-month defect, and then the 10-year structural guarantee. So it's like having that is important. And just a key, if you're watching and you're outside of Dunedin, and maybe you're not even looking to purchase in Dunedin, just buyer advice is to look into it, ask the question, what are the assurances, what's the process that developers follow, and if it's like TGC, then obviously there's confidence there, and all those good things. The next one is, I've seen a render that has an elevator, and so I thought, perfect way to ask about, tell us more about home innovation. Are there advancements here? Are there things that TGC is leaning into? I mean, it seems like the world's sort of advancing in the tech space, but are there things TGC does, like maybe an elevator or home technology? Can you tell us a bit about innovation in that space?
Yeah, so I suppose like our design is iterative. So we take the feedback from previous designs into future designs. And also because we control our own sales platform, we take the feedback for our sales process as well and build that into our designs. So that sort of led to some key sort of improvements over the years. So simple things like smart locks in our doors, electric vehicle charging capabilities in our housing, sort of stairwell and shaftless lifts. So because we've got quite an old demographic in Dunedin who want to buy a single story home, but actually it's very difficult to build single story homes that stack up. So we provide a solution of either a stairwell lift, which travels up the tread of the stair, or a lift which is similar to a cupboard, single cupboard that goes up and down through the floor. And then I suppose the other sort of innovation in home technology is really in the construction and improving our speed that we can deliver homes to the market. And so this, as I talked about before, like prefabrication is a big part of that. And the more we can do in that space, the faster we can build. So we've got our own yard off site that we have carpenters there almost full time now, building, prefabricating floors, stairwells. We store our ceilings there. We will often buy building materials in bulk, install that there to try and bring that cost down. So those doesn't sound like innovation, but it is, because that's what drives the cost down. That's what drives the speed of build. And those aspects are really critical to meeting that housing shortage.
Yeah, and that was the point I was going to say. It also leads towards just that greater impact, of what TGC is out to achieve, is to improve housing in Dunedin. And it just made me think, because the closeness that you guys have to your sales, like you said, you guys lead the sales platform for your company internally, talking to those buyers and obviously those purchasers as well. Are there common questions that buyers have? Like, for example, let's say Lucy and Tom, approached TGC, and maybe they're, you said it doesn't quite stack up in most cases, but maybe they're talking to like a group home, built in Dunedin or wider Dunedin region versus, a brand new townhouse through TGC. Are there like common questions people have, and then in response, like benefits between the two products?
Yes, I suppose one of the common questions is how the finance works. How do you pay for a house? So if you compare, say, a group home builder, how that works is you pay progress payments along the way.
Right.
So the builder never takes any real risk on. You're taking all the risk on. So the builder spends the money and then he gets reimbursed straight away.
Right.
And so if the builder goes bankrupt during that process, you're essentially stuck there with a half-finished house. That's probably
and funds spent.
Yeah. So that's a key aspect of a group home builder. A developer like TGC Homes works a bit different in that if a purchaser will come in and sign a sale and purchase agreement, they'll get a 10-day due diligence period where they can cancel the contract for any reason, whether they change their mind, they can't get finance, any reason at all. At that point, they pay a 10% deposit. That deposit sits in the lawyer's trust account. We don't have access to it. It sits there in escrow. Then we build the homes. There's no progress payments at all. We build them completely, and then at the end of that process, we hand the keys over, and the rest of the funds are provided by the purchaser. If we went bankrupt or went broke or anything during that process, we don't have access to that deposit, and the buyers never put any funds towards the development. So the risk is all on me as a developer, and not on the purchaser. So I think that's a really key question we get asked a lot. Probably the other sort of thing is around townhouses versus standalone properties. So we get a lot of questions about the intertenancy wall in townhousing.
Yeah.
And how that's how noise is stopped from being transferred between housing. And so we use a product called jib barrier line. So essentially the intertenancy wall is 2 fully framed insulated walls, and they're separated by a 25 millimeter jib barrier line product. So it's actually quite a thick. The wall's quite thick, and we've never had any complaints about the product. We actually have first-hand experience ourselves. One of the directors, Tom, he lives in one of our own townhouses with his wife and daughter, and they live there happy as. We lease one of our previous townhouses back as a showroom and office, and we never hear a whisper from our neighbours.
Yeah, awesome.
That product, exceeds the building code's noise protection requirements. So it is a very good product. So those are sort of 2 of the key questions we get often asked.
Yeah, because we, my wife and I, our first home that we purchased was a townhouse in Wainui in Lower Hutt, and we're an inside unit. It's now an investment property which we've got tenanted out. So we've moved to Nelson, but there was often, friends would, there was also be like friends' first question, like, oh, what's the sound like? And it's like, you literally don't hear anything. If you think about it, it's like 2 houses stacked against each other, both with insulated walls. It's almost better than one, and we actually wouldn't hear our neighbours at all. And I mean, when we did it was when we were out front saying, hey, friends, we became friends with the people in our development. So I think it's good. That is a very common question that I hear around too, is like the whole sound thing. So it's cool to hear some of the design and product behind, keeping that reduced. In terms of design and collaborations, we've already talked about a bit about that. Was it Gary Booth?
Greg Booth.
Oh, Greg Booth. Sorry, Greg Booth is an interior design collaborations. Are there other collaborations that you have, or working with Greg? Is that just a part of like bringing experts in? Instead of, I don't know, maybe trying to figure out interior design yourself, you're just working with partners that are obviously, like you see at the top of Dunedin.
Yeah. So I suppose, our design process incorporates experts like Greg Booth and the urban design team in the DCC, and then we take our feedback from our sales platform and our buyers and from our previous buyers, and then our architect takes all that information together and designs our homes. So I suppose that's sort of, it's more complex than that, but that's how we bring everything together.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Collaborative effort. We talked a lot about the history of Dunedin, sort of a little bit about the future in terms of that pressure and demand for housing. What's some of the, for right now, in today, there's obviously buyers coming to you for the projects that you've got, for sale now and in construction. What are you guys telling buyers right now? Buyers are facing, stress, stresses in funding or getting finance, whether that's their deposit size or it's their serviceability on rates. What's some of the advice that you guys are talking to your customers about? With someone who's looking to purchase a new home with TGC, are there things that people can put in place or guidance that you're giving to buyers at the moment?
So I suppose we always encourage people to take a long-term view if they're buying a house. It's really easy to get bogged down in the what's going to happen for the next 12 months. But generally, if people are buying property, they're buying it to live in, 5 to 10 years, and their mortgage is probably going to be a 30-year mortgage in New Zealand. So it's important to take a long-term view. And then we just from there we sort of provide some of the key metrics that are sort of underlying the property market at the moment. So, for example, last year our population grew by about 3%. The long-term average in New Zealand is 1.2%. So we had quite a boom last year in terms of our population, which required around about 50,000 homes to be built. Our country required around about 15,000 homes to be replaced last year. So all up, we should have built something between 60 and 65,000 homes last year.
Yeah, wow.
and we only built between 30 and 40,000 homes. There's only 37,000 new dwellings consented last year. So we only built around about half of the homes we needed to.
Yeah.
So I suppose there's a demand supply inequality there. So that which is going to put pressure on the housing market, and that's going to keep going. That mismatch is going to keep going moving forward. And then the other key aspect is access to credit and how easy it is for people to get access to loans to buy property and build property.
Yeah,
it's quite hard at the moment. Interest rates are high. I mean, I've got my own home here that I live in with my wife and son, and it definitely is noticeable.
Yeah.
But it is forecast to improve over the next sort of 18 to 24 months. And so if you're taking a long-term view and you're able to service the mortgage comfortably, then as access to credit becomes more available and we've got an increased demand for housing and a lack of supply of housing, the housing market should go up. And so that over time, and so that's sort of what we tell people.
Yeah.
And we let them we present the facts and let them make a decision on where things are going.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably answer that question.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, because I mean, even with my mum, when she bought her first home, it was $101,000 in a lower socio area, with a deposit of I think it was like 24 grand. But I sort of find encouragement in the fact that it was still a challenge for her, in the sense that it wasn't like it was just because it was a third of the or maybe a sixth of the price that it might have been now. It was still a challenge, and I think that's actually an encouragement for buyers just to know, you don't want to have the mindset of going, oh, they had it way easier back then. It's like you look at the challenge you have now, and like you said, look to the long-term goal of, you're going to own that home, and then making the decisions that, line up with that. So getting people together, you guys work with Greg Booth for interiors. Are there partners that you work with in terms of, mortgage brokers or finance companies or people that can help?
Yes, there are. So, particularly at the first home buyer market, people haven't been through the process before, obviously. And so we've got mortgage brokers that we know, gun mortgage brokers that are independent of banks.
Yeah.
That will push people towards, same as solicitors that we know are really good at, good property solicitors. Those sort of two aspects underpin people's purchase. And then, helping people through the, understanding their cash flow requirements for the homes, making sure they're factoring out things like rates, insurance, maintenance costs, that sort of thing. We aren't financial advisors, and we just provide the facts.
Yeah.
There are plenty of financial advisors that work in the property space that recommend TGC Homes, Thrive Investments in Christchurch do this really well. And they help property investors. They help match property investors, retirement or financial goals with housing that stacks up as a property investment. So, those are some of the key partners that we work with. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I think people need is all the help they can get, and encouraging, buyers watching this, get out there. George has mentioned a few names, but just get out there and talk to a developer who are there, people that they've worked with in the past. It's always good to have a referral or to know that someone's had a good experience. And so get in touch with them, or just hit up good old Google and just put the feelers out there, get in touch with the local broker who's got expertise and experience, can help you along the way. And just a couple of last things, I think, before we wrap up. There's the current times we've talked about, but what's the future for TGC? We have obviously heard about the future of the need, and we'll talk about what you guys are doing now. What's the future for TGC in terms of projects or expansion plans, or just achieving that vision that you guys have got?
So, there's the growing housing need in Dunedin, which is across all avenues of housing, and then because we want to be at a size that we're building between 70 and 100 homes a year in the city, so we've equally got to be across all aspects of housing if we want to be able to build that many homes. So at the moment we've got 3 products: the social housing, first home buyer and investor stock, and the retiree and downsizer housing. What we want to move into, we've got concept plans for, is university housing. So if anyone's been a university student at Otago, most of the flats are old and cold, single glazing, holes in the walls type job. So we want to come in there and build purpose-built townhousing that suits both landlords and tenants.
Awesome.
So that's one sort of product that we've got on the short-term horizon. The other next product is sort of medium-term is standalone housing. So we want to come in, buy a large lot of land, develop it ourselves, build standalone housing that's all in keeping with each other, and using our design and construction philosophy to bring the price down, and then sell those houses to the market.
Awesome.
And then finally, we want to get into the lifestyle market. So Dunedin is a rural service town. There's a lot of retired farmers and cockies that move to the cities, and they have a bit of land. And so that's sort of the I suppose the final frontier for TGC Homes.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, all of those products excite me, but that university student one, I think, is a big one. Dunedin is, obviously a massive university city and town with a lot of people coming in like that. That excites me. I think some of those key Dunedin flat streets make the news like every year. So it'd be cool to see TGC making the news every year with its, new housing for students. And surely it'll help them get better grades. Not a guarantee, but hopefully it'll keep them a bit more focused down there as well. Yeah. They'll have to behave themselves a little bit more if it's all, beautiful white walls and new appliances. Probably don't put an elevator in a uni student's development. But yeah, final, just to wrap up, what's a project, that's on offer right now that people could look at for TGC?
So not right now, but in about a month's time, we've got a CBD project coming to the market.
Awesome.
Christchurch, if you drive through Christchurch, you'll see townhousing all around the 4 avenues, really close to CBD. It's amazing. It's exactly what's needed. In Dunedin, it's very difficult to do this because of the historic building provisions all around the CBD. But we've managed to get some access to we've managed to acquire some land, which is within walking distance to the CBD. So we're going to be bringing stock there. It's going to be about 10 or 11 homes, and they'll all be Airbnb consented, which is another key aspect. So we're really targeting people that mostly young professionals that want to live and work in the city, and then also Dunedin has a real shortage of short-term accommodation. There's not many motels and hotels. The Dunedin Council have declined several consents over the last decade for new hotels. And there aren't many Airbnbs in the city. When they have an All Blacks test, it's always in the news every year. Single beds on the floor being rented out for $600 a night. People driving backwards and forwards from Christchurch for a Red Hot Chili's concert. So the Airbnb market really goes off if you can get a good one. And you can expect to get a return of close to $100,000 a year in gross revenue from an Airbnb in a good location in Dunedin. So targeting two real markets there, and haven't really been targeted before in Dunedin.
Awesome, George. Well, great episode. I think there's a lot in there for buyers to understand, the unique qualities of Dunedin and then the unique approach that you guys are taking to property. And really cool to hear about also just that upcoming, product line. It's quite exciting just seeing the diverse needs, and it lines up with your vision really, because you're addressing all of the needs, obviously not right now, but as you progress, that Dunedin has on the table right now to grow as a region and flourish, and hopefully just have more 660 concerts and more other things with Airbnbs that are available, and we don't have retirees renting out their elevator shafts on Airbnb for $1,000 a night, although it would make good press. So thanks, George. If you're listening to this and you're interested, TGC's all over social. You can also go to their website, TGC.nz. We'll put all of the links in here. They're also on the Townhouses platform. Everything in the caption when you're watching this video will be available for you to view what they've got going on, and maybe even sign up to an emailing list to hear about those new developments coming up in the future. But Thanks, George. Awesome to have you here. And that's the episode.